Hello, everybody. In this short presentation, we are going to elaborate on 5 countries, which are Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, and we will discuss the foundations of business in those countries. First, let's start with 3 important components that all of them have in common: market potential, diversity, and increasing wealth or a growing middle class, all thanks to capitalism. Important for you as an entrepreneur looking to do business in one of those countries, there are a couple things to consider: your property rights, which rights and duties your company has, and what the current situation on the labor market is. Now, for the labor market, the unemployment in all countries is fairly low, except for Indonesia with roughly 30%. They still have the highest GDP and rank 5th compared to the world. The Philippines still have the largest agricultural sector, occupied by 29% of the labor force. All of the countries have active labor unions fighting for the workers' rights. They have made immense progress in the past couple decades considering working conditions. In Indonesia, property may be inherited through bloodline, which is called adat, but there is also traditional ownership through a title. Land ownership is generally protected under the Basic Agrarian Law number 5 and is therewith pursuable in a court. There are 3 different types in the property law: the right to build on land, the right to cultivate the land, or the generic right to use the land, all of which are leases. For foreigners in Jakarta, there's a minimum value of $70,000 on all property sales, which acts as a barrier of entry to protect the middle class. Malaysian courts generally protect private property quite well. The country was removed from the US Trade Representative watch list due to improvements in protecting private property. For example, they're in compliance with the World Intellectual Property Organization, and real property must be recorded. Attorneys review transactions very closely. Foreign investors can borrow money using real property as collateral, but key issues remain the widespread availability of pirated software and inaccurate financial books. In the Philippines, land ownership is highly regulated. Only Filipino citizens and corporations with more than 60% of the shares are entitled to own land. Foreigners may purchase condos, buildings, and enter long-term land leases. The only way to own land for a foreigner is to set up a Filipino incorporated company. On real estate sales, there is a 10% capital gains tax. In Vietnam, land is collectively owned and governed by the state, making it impossible to own land. You can own and purchase or rent the property, such as a house, on the land. Leases for the land are available and distributed by the government. And the same thing goes for Thailand. There literally is no land ownership. People may only own the property on the land and lease the land for usage. The only exemption: be a company that benefits the Thai government and you'll be treated quite well. Now, in all those countries, there are 4 non-profit organizations. Most common in Indonesia is the PT, which is essentially a limited liability company. Management has a clear responsibility towards the shareholders. Founded by at least 2 individuals, it can have up to 3 different main business activities. Everything has to be monitored and reported every 3 months. In Malaysia, the private sector is not in the driving seat. The government has set up the Minister of Finance, who essentially controls big investment companies. This holds a barrier to foreign investments on small-scale business. The Filipino government owns and controls a large part of corporations. They receive financial assistance, making it extremely hard for foreign penetration. They claim that they could be more responsive to the public interest. One thing that all the countries have in common is the old tradition that still sits deep in the people's minds. Indonesia is Southeast Asia's emerging market number 1, since the central government shifted towards manufacturing instead of exporting raw commodities. Malaysia has a lot of cultural economic development, and they embrace it in their business culture. Their goal is a vibrant, sustainable, and ambitious business environment. The Philippines show a lot of potential, being the youngest country with an average of 23.2 years.
Created using Powtoon.